Greetings to the YouTube listener or watcher. Thanks for joining in with us in that way. Another good morning to everybody who's here and anybody on campus who might be watching through our closed circuit live stream. The chapel service makes its way through a rotation of 19 topics. The one for today is love. And so it's come to me to be the first and most important way I think about addiction is in relation to this topic. But that's an evolution for me. And I wanted to start by sort of confessing that a little bit. Sorry, I'm going to pin this to my face a little more. So, when I was a young boy, things happened to cause me to be, and part of this is I'm sure genetic, but I preferred things that I could measure, quantify, analyze, and get right or wrong. So, like the English class, the poetry class, the art class, those sorts of things. It's not that I wasn't interested in them or didn't appreciate them, but I tended to prefer things like the math and the sciences where I could excel in those areas. So I think that was part of it. I just liked that kind of area of strength, and it was difficult for me to move into areas that I thought of as weakness because of the fuzziness of the nature of things that are subjective, or the humanities versus the sciences kinds of things. Which is kind of funny because here I am now in a religious professional role, and so there has to be a story of how I got from one to the other, and it's taken some time, and I had to, at a certain set of stages, decide I was willing to wade in the water of the subjective and the unclear and the less rationalistic. And you might wonder, like, why am I saying this, or what is it? But I think it has everything to do with addiction and recovery in my story. It may have more to do with addiction and recovery as it brings you to the Caron Magic Mountain setting than you might at first realize. Because there are ways of thinking about addiction that are more nerd number-ish. The neuroscientists give us an opportunity to think about brain functioning and brain reprogramming, that's not the word, but neuroplasticity and various sorts of exercises that are done, some of them done with machines and like what you think is like you're playing a video game, but it's interesting that they know how to set up these exercises that will reduce cravings in the brain. Bizarre and surely interesting. And another way of thinking about that neurobiology of the brain is the neuropharmacology and these new medications that we have that reduce cravings, or medication-assisted treatment. There are just a number of ways of approaching the phenomenon of addiction that the old Jack would have probably been more inclined towards. But I shipwrecked on the shores of addiction recovery. Like my way of being wasn't working for me. And the people in the addiction recovery communities welcomed me, and their hospitality to me was weird. I'm like, why are these people being so nice to me? Because, there were other people who were not being so nice to me. I was getting, thrown out of bars, and the law was not happy with me after my third arrest for DUI, and, my family was a little, disgruntled to the extent that they cohered and could express any kind of thing, because I had a non-tight family system by that time. That's not good grammar, but you know what I'm saying. My family was not one of these integral, very bonded. I always hear people talk about, I had a dysfunctional family. I'm always a little skeptical of that, because my feeling is that there used to be a great comic that I love, I still can find it. It says, the adult children of normal parents convention, and there are two weird people sitting in the seats. So, if I'm insulting you, I apologize. Maybe you are the ones who come from that awesome functional family. Good for you. Or maybe Denial Anonymous should be your next stop. But we all come from wounding. Everybody has their own kind of difficulties in growing. There's no way to escape suffering. The Buddhists sort of know that. And I shouldn't say that the Buddhists offer a path to experience the sufferings of the world in a way that's less damaging. So there are ways to suffer more skillfully, but none of us is spared the experience of loss and pain and embarrassment, and it's just tough to be a human being, I think. And if if you just don't think that's been tough, good for you, awesome. But it was not easy for me. Anyway, get back on the outline, Jack. As I came into my addiction recovery, and I mentioned that the people in addiction recovery and their hospitality to me was really important. Well, that's love, right? They were very loving to me. And that loving kindness facilitated an opening in me. And I began to explore my own inner reality, and also was invited by, especially for me, it was a 12-step invitation. This was over 30 years ago when there were not as many choices for support communities as there are for people today. So today, like Smart Recovery, you have Recovery Dharma, you have all these different 12-step flavors. But in my early recovery, it was kind of AA or NA was the thing. And I did both. But both of those paths, and now these other ones like Recovery Dharma and Smart Recovery, all call the person to do some deep introspection and a discovery of kind of how one ticks and what has accumulated from the past as a part of the inventory taking. And it's in this inner look that I started, and in the cultivation of what would be called faith, or reliance in a power greater than oneself, that I started to realize that I could try to swim in the fuzzy waters rather than having to stay in the clearly delineated analytical sort of realm. So much so that when people were talking about faith and a higher power, I quit a job and went to seminary. Really interesting shift out of a kind of agnostic, atheistic, like prove it or I don't believe in it kind of status to a curiosity and openness to matters spiritual and interpersonal. And now it's 34 years of not drinking for me, and I've moved through church work to chaplaincy, and in coming to Caron 16 years ago, I encountered my colleagues here. This is a really interesting, if you're a professional here, what you find out is that it's a really rich environment of profound thinkers and highly skilled people, many of whom are profound thinking and highly skilled in matters that are not numerical and empirical. They're really good at people stuff. And so I tried to catch up, and learn to do that. And one of the things that I encountered was a set of teachings within the realm of addiction studies that identifies addiction as a matter of attachment. And I know that sounds like a nerdy word, but it's really, to me, what that means is addiction is an issue related to love. And that, human beings are love machines. The baby comes out of the mother, and we've learned that infant parent bonding, skin-to-skin contact, is fundamental to the beginning establishment of the right rhythms and cadences of the body. The child learns to breathe more regularly just from that skin-to-skin contact, and kids who are put in neonatal intensive care I don't know what the right word is there, but if they're prevented from that, that can have an issue in long-term development. And so we really, really are love organisms. We stay in our nuclear families with a great deal of assistance in our development longer than I think any other organism that we're familiar with on the planet. 25 years, they say, for the males and maybe less for the females. Yes, you get to score one on us, and most of us knew that already. There's so many things that come out of this research that I think are also like things that have been known for forever about human beings. But when you think about addiction as an attachment issue, there are a couple of people who have really moved the ball down the field, have articulated in very concrete ways, and two of them are a gentleman named Philip Flores, who wrote an addiction textbook called Addiction as an Attachment Disorder, and then more recently a popular book I want to say around 2004, Gabor Mate wrote this book called In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts. And I forget what the subtitle is, but his title catches the idea that addiction is distorted attachment. It's love gone awry. It is the mechanism within us that seeks to bond, but we're bonding with heroin, we're bonding with alcohol, we're bonding with gambling, we're bonding with, Amazon and the, Amazon Prime Day is coming up. So, which I'm already thinking about. It's a bad sign. This is the craver in me. I want, and that want, perhaps hundreds of years ago, or anthropologically, as you think of how we developed as, critters coming through the, evolution of the species, was for my own protection, because as I'm born from my mother's body, I'm totally unsafe in the world. And I, by wanting her, and her by wanting me, provides me a context of safety in a world where otherwise, I'm going to get eaten by the bear or whatever. So this is survival anthropology and biology at work. And what happens is, if I experience a lack of safety in my yearning to satisfy my desire, then I'm prone to unhealthy forms of satisfaction of that yearning. This is what is called distorted attachment. And there's all kinds of really powerful theories about it. I want to get out of my lecture mode to talk about. But this is one of the reasons why it's so hard to break the ties of addiction, is because there's a lack of a sense of safety. And the reason I'm hooked on these things is because I don't trust y'all. And I don't trust the world in which we live. And if you tell me, oh, it's totally safe, it's completely fine, you're lying. The world isn't safe. There are circumstances when we do experience sufficient safety to not need these addictive derailments of healthy connection, but there's just so many of us who are unhealthily connected. And, it's an issue of severity that is how addiction is today measured. So it's not an on-off. Are you an addict or are you not? It's a question of degree. And people who have mild or non-derailment kinds of connectedness to substances and behaviors, like people in my family who can apparently safely drink, which I think is so weird. But it's a question of mild, then becomes moderate or severe. Then it would be helpful for them to figure out how to dial back or abstain from these unhealthy forms of attachment, and figure out how to get their attachment needs met through prayer and meditation for the divine connectedness, and through loving relationship, healthy communication, or negotiation of conflict that continues the relationship forward. That's how the deepest relationships that we have with other people are not from them being hunky-dory all the time. It's because when I get an thing with you, and we figure it out, we're closer than we were before we negotiated the difficulty. So, if you and I get when I'm 11, then somebody says, hey, why don't you form a relationship with me? The wounding I had from this brokenness causes me to be reticent to form another attack. So it's like, and we all know this. This is hard. It is hard to do relationship. It is hard to stay in relationship. It's hard to do this skillfully. And it's easy to connect to Johnny Walker. It's easy to get on the internet and start shopping. It's easy to go to the casino. It's just unbelievably accessible to do anything other than the real deal. So one might wonder if you, as an infant, and then as a young child, and then as a teenager, an adolescent, and a young adult, have this distorted attachment characteristic. This becomes a feature of how you function, which is totally me. I'm embarrassed to say, I remember carrying drugs in international travel, like cocaine in my shoes into China. And it was because I thought there was some part of me that thought that was a sane idea, or at least like a necessary survival thing. First of all, what a tragic thing. Why didn't I not go into that? Takes away from my experience of this international thing, because I'm holding up in some bathroom doing lines instead of having the experience of connectedness with a foreign reality. But it does for me, allows me to support the claim that I don't know that I ever had this in a healthy way. I don't know that I ever was free of some distorted channel in which I was meeting my craving for connectedness in a suboptimal way. So here, 28 years old, I'm basically struck sober by the recovery community and by my own complete collapse in near total, disarray. As I say, I shipwrecked on the shores of Alcoholics Anonymous. I was a complete mess. It was either, DTs and, under the bridge kind of derailment of my seemingly functional life, or get help. And I got help, and help helped me. But here's the key question from a theoretical standpoint is, can my distorted attachment patterning be repaired? Can I unlearn unhealthy attachment, and can I learn healthy attachment? It's actually a really good question, and it's a not obvious answer, because when you look at kids who come out of foster care, rotations through a month, there are theorists who suggest that even sociopathy or whatever, that some people are so wounded in their early attachment harm that they may never be able to be repaired, that they can never. And I've seen this. I've seen this in some circumstances of people, and I've seen also, but I believe in the capacity for human beings to repair. I think we are incredibly resilient, and I think all you need to do is listen to some of the stories or watch some of the stuff that we see in documentaries. You find out that people who have been really wounded can spin this around. And the theorists tell us, what is the term for this? Oh, it's learned or earned security. I don't know that I love that term, but it's the term that's used within attachment theory for the rehabilitation of a person who has become so comfortable in distorted attachment schemes that they don't know how to do real relationship. And the evidence in these theories is that it's practice. It's just exposure to relationship over a significant period of time, where you really need some people who will dive into the hole with you and start to bond with you when you're get away from me, kind of scared to have anybody love you. That is the beginning. It's you need a whisperer. You need a person who can get to you and allow you to begin to come forward, or a few or several, and then it's practice. So as I was preparing for the message through the week, I started wrestling and getting all kinds of distorted tangents, which is, many of you know, I can get really way off track. But what I wanted to do before I finished the message was I wanted to take a look at the staging of the journey that many of you are on. Because if you think of it, it's an earned security journey. This place helps people repair this crap. Clean that up. So, how this often begins, how you become the wristband person or the family member, is through this thing that's called an intervention, right? And interventions have been depicted in, television shows. In fact, they become the subject of television shows. And I don't want to ask hands of how many were in an intervention. Probably a lot of you were. It's a lot of how people get here is either formal or less formal. But it's hey, wake up call. That is an act of love. That is and the early model for intervention was confrontational. People would get together and they would go, you have completely messed up your life and you need to go. We packed a bag for you, get in the frickin' car. Well, it turned out the success rate of that kind of intervention was really low. You had a lot of people who were I'm not going, I'm gonna go back to drinking, leave me the hell alone. What's happened as interventional competency has improved is that the people who do interventions today, who are trained in the models of intervention, and intervention success is way higher today, have learned that love is what you need. You need people around this person who have love for them and who will bring the love to the table and say, this is hurting me to watch you suffer. And my deep yearning is for our love to improve and get deeper. And I believe that the only way for our love to improve is for you to take this path out of your, not said this way, but out of your distorted attachment dramas, so that we can grow as family members, as friends, as loved ones, even as co-workers. I always think if it's co-workers who do the intervention, that's like a sad testimony of the very thing I'm talking about. Because that means that that's where love is. I've had clients come here who were sleeping in their offices and working, like so much that their biological and social loved ones otherwise were just basically gone. And if that's all you have left, great. Like at least somebody stepped in and said, hey, come back to the world. But my hope is not that you will flourish then in a work environment for the rest of your life. My hope is that eventually you'll move out of the office and start making real friends, and then maybe, go on a date or something, and large, because, derailment here for a minute from the topic. My boss, just recently, we were talking about in my supervision, the stuff that's Caron related and the stuff that's Jack related. And we started flipping. So in one supervision, we talked about my stuff first, and in the next supervision, we talked about the job stuff first. And God bless her, she finally said, I came in one week and I'm like, hey, the work stuff's really important. She said, no, it isn't. And I said, what? How could my boss say the work stuff is not important? She said, in 50 years, which one's going to matter? And the sad thing is, a lot of us forget this, and we get all wrapped up in the drama of the professional and the accomplishment, forgetting that it's about love, it's about grandkids, and my other thing is, who's going to be with you when your life is reaching its end? It's not going to be your coworkers. I mean, if it is, that's not the ideal context. So, get back to the thing. Interventions work better when they're love-driven than when they're confrontational driven. And then, in many cases, if the severity is acute enough, people come here. What is the phrase that is the catchphrase of this place? It is, we will love you until you can love yourself. And that goes back pre-attachment theory. It's not like this place didn't know. That's what I said earlier in the message. A lot of this stuff is stuff that's been known for thousands of years. So you get all this science just to prove what grandma knew, right? And at least grandma wasn't totally off course, but the deep wisdom of the ages, Jesus says, love God, love your neighbor, right? This is the distillation of the entire Jewish law code in his mind, it's about love. And you can look around other wisdom traditions of the world and see the centrality of love and attachment as the foundational thing. So then you come to this bubble, the Caron bubble, and what happens? There's, Miss Pat in the cafeteria, who is just as loving as she could possibly be, and there's the chapel music little cohort, and there's, I hate to say, but the butt hut. There's this cohesion of people who are loners and isolated and find their community at the crack house or whatever, have lost the depth of authentic relationship, begin to sort of forge meaningful connectedness again. And its purpose is not for these relationships to be the perduring ones for the rest of your life. This is a practice room. This is like nursery school. This is the beginning of the give and take, the push and pull of trying. And that's why things like cost letters and consequences group and very, very intense small group therapy experiences are practice runs at what we pray you will learn to do out in the real world when you matriculate on to next levels of care. And so it's a gradation from clinical support and sort of structured love, which you need less and less of, as you begin to figure out how to build more and more unstructured and, I'll dare say, authentic, organic or true to the context of your environment, where you begin to find a way of belonging and fitting in a world that provides you nurturance and safety and support. And there are people who have been so traumatized and so abused or so wounded in various other ways, that just the tragic events in their lives or profound grief and loss events, all that stuff, for whom this is not an easy thing. It sounds like a great plan, these are the people who struggle to sustain abstinence over the long term. Is that, yes, they begin to make the crawl, kneel, walk kind of movement, and then another risk rupture thing that gets close, and the next thing you know, they're retreating back into the hole. It's like, I could not tolerate my discontent. And so I found myself going to the liquor store and it's depicted in tons of movies. And you think, why are they doing that? because the safety gets broken. It's because whatever that is, this window of risk, the willingness to try to fly the nest and it's a dark nest, it's a terrible, it's not safety and security, it's this poison well. So this paints a picture of the journey of recovery as the reacquisition of competence, either never acquired or long lost. And you can be insulted by that if you want, but I don't mean it in that. I mean it in an inspirational way. And what I want to say to those of you who maybe have never had it or who lost it is you can have this. You deserve it. You deserve to have love in your life. You deserve to have better love in your life than the crack dealer. Better love in your life than the fake relationships that orchestrate themselves around the rave or the saturnalia, the sex, drugs, and rock and roll, sort of, which claims to be solidarity, except that those people scatter like mice when the light gets turned on and the real need arises. So, the thing I was most afraid of, which is why I became a math and physics major, is now the thing that's the most important to me. And like one of the best moments of my last 48 hours was watching my 6-year-old granddaughter just be hilarious at the dinner table. I can't believe I have a granddaughter. I didn't have kids. I suspect the truth about my first marriage not having children is attachment wounding in both myself and my former spouse. I think we couldn't risk it. And I think the culmination of this, and then I'll shut up, the culmination of this is not only when you know how to belong and experience and receive love, which comes from this remedial love education, but it's when you give it. When you turn around and you become the safe person for somebody else, or the stars line up and you find the opportunity through coupleship, whatever it is, to have a child enter your life. And that's the ultimate, because the child gives in a funny way to the parent, but it's not the child's job to meet the parent's attachment needs. It's the parent's job to meet the child's attachment needs. It's a pretty much, in terms of responsibility, it's a unidirectional thing. If you were a child at some point and you felt responsible for your parents' happiness, that is not how it's supposed to go. And if you were the parent here in the room, I'm sorry to push you, but I'm going to say, if you feel that you need your child to come back around and love you, that's not how it's supposed to go. How it's supposed to go when you're the parent of the child is give, give, give. It's the nature of how we were evolved. And this is the God of my understanding, gives, gives, gives. The God of my understanding does not need me to love he, she, or it. Like a beautiful parent's always there for me, to hold and sustain me. Whew, a lot of turf there. So I don't even know how to finish except to say this is a call for us right here to risk the areas that make us the most uncomfortable. And what probably got you here was an unwise safety move. And the people who are here with you watched you turtle in that unwise safety path and want you to come out of your shell. And they will be here for you, or they wouldn't be here right now. They are here because they are still trying. They are still wanting to participate in an authentic, loving relationship with you. Thank God, right? We have not lost it all. We can make it back to the thing we were designed for, which is to love. Thank you so much.